I've got like a table of tricks. I feel like a very tall, feminine Paul Daniels. So you have to bear with me. I just wanted to show some creative ways, really, of thinking about anger. Thank you for inviting me to come and talk today. It's been an amazing day. I've been listening to all sorts of inspirational stories, and that's fantastic. And you're right, whoever said earlier, it's nice to be in a room full of people who get it, because you don't have to convince anybody. Everyone's on the right page. So I wanted to talk a bit about feeling angry and frustrated. And I wanted to check, really, firstly, how many people here get angry sometimes? Oh, good. Okay. So 100% of us will feel angry and frustrated at different times. We might all have different triggers, and we all might have different reactions, but we will all feel angry. And I think sometimes at Fortis, we work in all sorts of places, schools and businesses and private referrals, and we get referrals for all ages with things written on like anger. This person needs anger management. And it's a real bugbear of mine, because actually it isn't about anger management, it's about understanding what the behaviour is trying to tell us, if that makes sense. How many people here have received an email and has had something in it that's really, really made you angry? How many people here have accidentally replied and hit send? Oh, okay, it's not just me. Yeah, so we all experience it, and if we respond in the moment when we're feeling angry, we might do something that actually we regret a lot later on. And children and young people are no different. Fortis works with all ages. Our youngest client at the moment is 4 years old, and the oldest we've ever worked with is 83. I have 3 children as well, and one of my children, she gets quite angry sometimes. And we have language around that, so she gets hangry. Hungry and angry. She did it on Saturday. She just doesn't turn into this child I've never seen before. Another one that my children have coined is slumpy, which is sleepy and grumpy. She doesn't like that one because they developed it for her. So when we are feeling, lots of different things and we're reacting to circumstances, we're going to feel, angry, and we're going to act that out. And it's really challenging when you're working with children, young people and adults, when people become angry, because it's a powerful emotion, isn't it? We maybe don't know what to do or how to respond. And if we're feeling angry ourselves as well, how do we then react, and what do we do to manage it for ourselves? So I want to introduce Jack. Now, I know there's been more Incredibles movies since the first one, but what happened to Jack in the first movie, right at the very end? He burst into flames because he was under threat. We were hearing earlier about the amygdala and, all that kind of thing, and as the lady was talking, I was thinking, that's my talk. There it is, there it's gone. But I want to look at it a bit creatively. So the amygdala, which is the part of the brain that helps us survive. So there's 4 responses. There's fight, flight, freeze, and flop. Okay? Now, we might have different reactions at different times depending on what we're feeling under threat from and what triggers us. But the way I talk about this, especially with children and young people, is about this being the amygdala. So this is a jumpy superhero. The superhero jumps in to help us survive a situation. So we know whether we need to fight it, whether we need to run away from it, whether we need to freeze and not move, which a lot of younger children do. They think also if they close their eyes that you can't see them. And you also might see the flop response. Has anyone seen those videos on social media where people are on roller coasters and they kind of cut out and then they come back round? And then they realise, oh, shit, I'm still on it. And then go back out again. So that's your flop response. So the jumpy superhero is there for a reason. And if we're feeling angry about things, it's because we're feeling under threat. Added to that is, this is a stress toy, is the thinking one. So the prefrontal cortex, the bit at the front of your brain that helps us to feel that we can make decisions, that we can think things through, that we can be balanced. That bit, when the superhero jumps in, we can't access. So we can't find out what we're supposed to do. So when you say to a child, why did you do that? And they go, I don't know, because they don't know, because they can't access that part of the brain. The other part of the brain is the librarian, and that's at the back of the brain. That's your hippocampus. Now, The hippocampus is the place where we store all our coping mechanisms, all the things we know we need to do, all our past experiences, all the things that tell us what we're supposed to do in this situation. Now, if the superhero becomes too jumpy and is bursting into flames at every touch and turn, we can't access any of that information. So that kind of fits in with feeling angry, fits in with feeling anxious. And sometimes when you're seeing people becoming angry, I was talking to a teacher this morning, actually, and he was saying, I'm just angry. I'm angry about everything. I want them to switch the computers off because I'm worried about global warming. I want them to, stop using all the pencils. I want, everything, all the things that he was struggling to control, he was feeling very angry about. And it isn't about those things, it's about something else. But that's what we start to focus on. Does that make sense? So when you're working with children and young people, coming up with creative ways of being able to help them to understand what's going on. So you can actually say, the superhero jumped in and I didn't need them to, but I didn't know what else to do. And then you can actually work from there. Another thing to think about is this. This is one of my boxing gloves. They're rather large, but anyway. And so in each of our heads, we've all got an inner critic. Yeah? Can people relate to that? Okay, so what kind of things might you be saying to yourself in your head that aren't that helpful? Or not necessarily yours, but things you might think. Yeah? People worrying about being an idiot? Yeah? What else? I'm not good enough? Can't do this? Yeah, I can't change who I am. Sorry? Yeah, for being late, yeah. Failure. Letting people down. Do you think we would talk to anybody else like that? No, I don't think we would. So the inner critic means that we can actually almost work ourselves to a standstill. Because we can tell ourselves we can't do something, we tell ourselves we're no good, we tell ourselves, why did I even put myself in this situation in the first place? I knew it would never work. There's all these really negative messages that we tell ourselves and we beat ourselves up with. Now, if you think about all ages, we all do that. If we're thinking about several hundred words a minute, and we're trying to kind of figure things out, and we're feeling anxious or we're feeling angry about something, you can see why the decisions that we then try and make sometimes don't make any sense. Or we set ourselves off on a journey and we actually can't achieve it because we're telling ourselves that we can't achieve it. You almost self-fulfilling prophecy. Another thing to think about, this really is a low rent prop. It's okay, I didn't use it this week, it's fine. This is, if you think about this as a psychological filter, okay, so this is in your head. So the things that you're saying to yourself, what happens to those? Do they stay in the sieve or do they fall out? What do you think? Stay in, yeah. So those things, a bit like lumpy gravy, those things stay in the sieve. And the good stuff, what happens to that? Falls out. So that stuff falls away. So we don't tend to hold on to the good stuff. If I think about years ago, my family used to own some restaurants and I used to be the manager of it. And we'd have an amazing day and we'd have one complaint. What was the thing I remembered at the end of the day? The one complaint. I need to think about how I can make that better. Not the thousands of people we'd served and it had all gone quite well. So the other thing with this is also about how other people speak to you and what they say and what you hold on to. So if you get a compliment from somebody, what do you do with that? Dismiss it. Can other people relate to that? Yeah. So we dismiss it. So we get a compliment, we don't tend to hold on to it because we maybe think it's not true, or they haven't got that quite right, or that can't be true, and we let it go. So it falls out the sieve. So when we're thinking about feeling angry and frustrated, we're also competing with what's going on in our own heads before we're even triggered, before we've even had a situation that's occurred. So thinking about our self-talk and talking to ourselves like someone we actually like or even love is going to make a big difference to how we then respond to situations that trigger us. A trigger for me, for feeling angry, is if things are unfair or unjust. I have a real proper physical response, even as I'm saying it. And I know that's a trigger for me. And I know sometimes it isn't that things are unfair, it's just my perception. And I need to think about that and put things in place to try and calm down. So another thing that we tend to find is that children and young people and adults are told to calm down. How effective is that as a strategy? No, not really. It doesn't work for me anyway. So being able to slow everything right down so that we don't respond in the moment, a bit like the email. If we get the email and we're angry and we walk away from it and give ourselves a bit of time before we respond, what's the response like that we send back? Yeah, a bit better, a bit more balanced, maybe a bit rational, maybe. Some rational thought put in there. And we respond in a particular way. So it's the same thing. If we're feeling angry, if we're dealing with somebody who's feeling angry, what can we do to help them to be able to express what's going on and also recognise that we understand it? So if I give you an example recently, one of my children was getting more and more agitated. And I knew something was happening, but we had a massive argument. And I'm normally quite good at not playing. You know, I do this stuff for a living every day. I should be quite good at this. And it caught me out. And I responded, and when I reacted, and we, escalated quite quickly, and it calmed down just as quickly, thankfully. But it was one of those situations where I thought, I know there's something going on. That behaviour that I'm seeing is something else. It's not about what we've just rowed about. And actually, when I spoke to them about it, it was actually something they were really worried about to do with their health. And we were able to figure it out and sort it out from there. So what the behaviour looks like on the surface and what's going on underneath is totally different. It's a communication, it's a way of kind of trying to express, actually, I feel out of control, I'm not sure how to do this on my own. So if you can look past the behaviour and see the person and actually recognise that they need you to be able to say, I get it, I can see what's going on, I know something's happening, I don't know what it is, but let me help you. And you start to kind of approach that differently, you're going to get a different reaction. We work in a lot of schools across the region, and sometimes some of the conversations we hear, it's brilliant hearing your story, hear the staff having with some of the young people, escalate straight away. Because they're not meeting the rules, they're not doing what they should be doing, they're not following the consequences. And actually, if that conversation was managed differently, that escalation wouldn't have happened in the same way. Does that make sense for everybody? Yeah. Okay, so something to really think about as well. We were talking about yoga earlier, which was really interesting, and the effect of breathing and getting that right. Breathing is massively important, and it's hugely underrated, especially when it comes to managing the brain and managing the reactions. So if you're thinking about practicing this, these aren't things you just do when someone's in the moment and feeling angry, or you are. These are things you need to be practicing beforehand. Yep, so you're training yourself. So 7-11 breathing is a really good, quick way of being able to do this without having to have anything to watch or anything to do. And you can do it in meetings because there's a table and no one can see your belly's moving. So I want everyone to just have a quick practice. So if you put your hand on your belly, if you put your feet on the floor, so your feet are grounded, and I want you to just breathe in for the count of 7 in your own time, and then breathe out for the count of 11. Full diaphragm. It's not attractive, but it works. Okay, and then do have another go as well. I want you to do 3. Okay, has everybody managed that? How does that feel? Feel about internally, how does that feel? Calming? Yeah, a bit of space. Do you feel your muscles relaxing a little bit? If you breathe properly, your muscles will relax and your brain will be able to function more clearly. So the things of the brain that I was talking about earlier, your jumpy superhero, your light bulb and your library, you can access them and you can start to make some clearer decisions. So anything you can do with children and young people around that and helping them to understand what's going on is going to be massively helpful for them and their ability to be able to de-escalate themselves and be able to feel in control and recognise that they actually can do that for themselves. Is that okay? Thank you.
Has anyone got any questions? Hi, you said about referrals. Is it self-referral, GP referral, or is it done via school?
Anyone. We have private referrals, so families can refer in. It's a private business, private organisation. Schools, we tend to buy us in through People Premium. And we also work for local authorities, post-adoption services, that kind of stuff as well.
Okay, because my son's 9 and he's really struggling at the moment. He's been self-harming for a year now.
Yeah.
And his anger's getting worse. I think it's frustration.
Yeah.
More than
it's just another symptom, isn't it?
Yeah, he's very confused, doesn't want to talk. He'll talk to other people but not talk to me as a parent. Yeah. But it's also how I address as a mum, how to help him. Yeah. Because I'm at a loss at the moment. I honestly don't know what to do for the best. Yeah. And when you mentioned referral, I didn't know whether he had to be referred by the school or a GP, or whether I can.
No,
actually.
You can refer. Fantastic. You can have a chat with us at the end and I'll talk you through it.
Brilliant, thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you. Are there any other questions? Just a quick one. When a child's been traumatised, obviously their brain develops differently.
Yeah.
Would this still work on a traumatised brain like that, or would you need different techniques?
No, I think we do a lot of work with trauma, and the difference with trauma, I suppose, is that how you approach it makes such a difference to the response that you then get, because you are actually a threat. The behaviours you see are the behaviours that child or young person has developed over the time to survive. It's their survival mechanism. So although it can be incredibly challenging and really difficult to help them, the whole idea of this is you need to it's understanding the trauma, it's understanding the individual child and what triggers them, but it's also about putting some of these things in place so that they can, you're working with them on it all the time, not just when it happens, because that tends to be when everyone suddenly is action stations, but it's a process and it takes longer than that. Does that help?
I wondered if you had any book recommendations so that parents like myself of young children could sort of think about ways to start this conversation early. And I personally get very triggered if my son expresses himself, because as a child I felt like my emotions weren't validated and I was sort of taught to internalise them and beat myself up over them. And I don't want that for him, but at the same time I find myself shying away from what he's expressing and not being able to support him through that. So I wondered if you had anything that I could
there's a really good book for teenagers called Blame It on the Brain. That's a really good book because that talks about the brain and how it functions and things. Some of the chimp paradox stuff is really good as well. He's just written one. I just picked this up because I bought it the other day as I was leaving the house so I could use it for the library. But Professor Steve Peters, his stuff around the chimp paradox is really useful as well. And he's just done one for children. What I was just going to say there as well is that when you've got a family dynamic or you've got a situation with a child and maybe a teacher and you've got very different reactions to those kinds of emotions, it can be really challenging because maybe what you would do to help him might not be something you can do because of how you react to it. So it's understanding those things and working on those things for yourself as well as helping them as well.
Okay, thank you.
I think I saw another hand, but we have no more time. But if you could jot your question down, then we can come back to it in the panel.